I'll do this one, you do too.
Deal.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. We'll get started. Annie, roll call.
Yes, so online we have Cheryl Hartman, Christina Dewar, Dave Erickson, Alicia Beckholtz, Irene MCAT, and Melissa Fisher. In 206, we have Brian West, Commissioner Strohmeyer, and one Deb Bureau, I'm sorry, I have a head cold. Matt Jennings, Emmy Bristow, Ann Hughes, Carrie Powers, Andrew Torney, Annie Kathy, Allison France, Slavin Lee, and we have, I'm gonna go to my list, sorry, Chantel Gaynor. Say it wrong. Saldina Cross. Thank you. Micah Grimmett. And we have Erica Greenday and Maddie Scott. That is everybody.
Thanks. Is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? We'll go on to the consent agenda. I don't know about number 2. That was a joke. That was a joke. We want Chris. Hey.
I'm good with this consent agenda. I would move we pass the consent agenda.
Second, any further discussion? Okay, public comment? None, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Commissioners, Brian West has suggested that action item number 2 that we do at the very end of today's meeting, just because there'll be a lengthier discussion on it.
Okay.
So even after.
Oh, after the
correspondence?
discussion items?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me take it out of order because I
Okay.
likely will end up recommending closure for a portion of it, and then people don't have to hang around waiting for you to reopen to hear everything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
First action item, Slavin.
Yes,
Oh, sorry, I just assumed Slavin. Maddie, Slavin, sorry. Yeah.
I'll start.
Team up.
So this is to request for board appoint members to the Missoula City County Library Board. There's 2 partial terms open. One expires June 2028. The other expires June 2027. Met with Alex Beal, Catherine Walter, Molly Gaulish, and Whitney Rimmel. The board would like to suggest Alex Beal and Catherine Walter or Katie Walter.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
I feel like after chatting with these folks, we have such a wealth of talent, and we are so fortunate that people want to be involved. And I'm not surprised because the library is so great. I'm happy nominating these 2 folks to the library board.
All right.
Do we have to designate who the alternate is?
I mean, that I could suggest maybe putting Alex at the full term and the alternate being Katie, or
Yes,
who would you guys?
that's what we want.
All right,
Perfect.
that's what we'll do.
Whatever the board
Yes.
recommends. Okay,
Thanks.
that's your motion.
That's the motion.
Second, any public comment, further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Slavin.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
We are so lucky. Yes. Okay, correspondence. No, okay, discussion items. Who'd like to go first? County Attorney, mental health evaluation contract extension?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. First of all, I just got back from a county attorneys convention over the last 3 days in Fairmont. And one of the themes that a lot of county attorneys sometimes express is adversarial relationship to their county commissioners, and nobody ever supports them or cares about what they do. And every time they ask for something, they get reamed out and told to look.
Oh,
And I just want to say,
that is the truth.
so before I ask for money, I just want to say, you guys are really amazing. Everything about you could not be better. So I do mean that.
Was it a surprise? You guys get along out there in Missoula?
Yeah, they're really surprised. And then they're like, don't get me started on our cities versus counties. It's just
We
nasty.
actually get along with them too.
I know.
We're having a nice chat with the sheriff too.
We are in like.
We need more dissension here.
We are like singing Kumbaya. It's a campfire. Everybody in Missoula County, you should come over to our side. It's really nice. But I did want to say, I just really appreciate it. We've had a lot of success in the last couple of years on sort of moving forward on some of our case management software, increase efficiencies in our system, really balancing public safety with some innovative things like the investment in our pretrial diversion program. And then the mental health obviously is this big aspect of a lot of things that we've been working on within our office and then in the community as a whole. What's before you on this United Minds contract is a very, very small piece of what goes on with mental health in our community, but it's some of the most important work that we do because they're the most high-risk individuals that are experiencing either thoughts of self-harm because they're suicidal or they're acting out in a manner that makes them an imminent risk to others as well, or in certain circumstances, they can't take care of themselves in any way. So negative 20 degrees and somebody's, in their underwear walking around outside because of their mental health illnesses, we have to step in and assist. And that's been delegated to county attorney's offices. So the pathway to people getting involved in sort of our civil commitment procedure is that generally, I'll just give you a typical case. Somebody ends up in the hospital, either family or friends take them, law enforcement, or they do on their own. They're experiencing that imminent risk of harm to themselves or others, and they're in need of either emergency detention or commitment because they don't want to stay on their own. One of the byproducts of mental illness is often inability to recognize the problems going on internally or your inability to seek help for yourself. So our first option is an emergency detention, and that's something that we do by a letter that can hold somebody to the next business day. This is just a real short time stopgap measure. Like we got to keep our hands on you and make sure you're okay. The next business day, we start making an assessment about whether we need to do a formal commitment procedure. That's a lot more court paperwork, and I won't bore you with all that, but we essentially, to round up and make it simple, we do about 250 emergency detentions a year, and then we do about 250 civil commitments a year. If you picture the Venn diagram, a lot of the people that we do an emergency detention on, we end up filing a civil commitment on. But some people will just go right to the commitment, and then some people, they'll get detained, but that next morning, they're feeling a lot better. They got some medications, somebody's been talking to them, and they're actually able to volunteer to stay in longer, or maybe a family or friend will come pick them up, right? That's a great scenario.
Sorry to interrupt. When you do the 24-hour, where do those folks go?
So a few different options. Typically, they're going to start at St. Patrick's Hospital, and we're getting an evaluation. So Brian's actually been on call for the last few days, just handed it off to John Hart, I think last night, right? Or maybe you're just helping out, but we're getting a call from a mental health professional at St. Pat saying, hey, we've been working with this guy all day. This person has schizophrenia and they have suicidal ideation. We asked them to stay on their own to go to ideally the neurobehavioral mental health unit at Providence Center. So on Orange by the interstate. That's really our best local option. When Western Montana Mental Health has beds available, whether it's Dakota House or West House, I think Lake House shut down, but those are options where they could stay for an emergency detention, or really the default option is the state hospital. And as we talked about repeatedly, there is no bed space. They're not really a great partner on that because of their capacity issues, loss of accreditation, staffing, a variety of issues. So there aren't really many good options. The only way that we can compel the state hospital to take somebody is through the commitment process and getting a judge involved. But by the time we've detained somebody, and that is a restriction on somebody's liberty, they have all these rights that they have a right to a hearing before the judge, and they have a right to get their own evals and be in their own clothes. And we try and respect that dignity of people involved in the system. But our partners to get this into the court system are mental health professionals in our community that are currently being provided by United Minds, this contract the county has. And they are doing the evaluations of the people that we have detained and that are pending a commitment, and they're seeing where they're at. They're getting that diagnosis. They're seeing if they're okay. They're seeing if there's a less restrictive option for them, if they're able to go home. That's our plan, if they can get into a group home, or if we need to commit them because they really are unstable and we're worried about their well-being or others. So we have these really amazing professionals.
And again, commitment only means state hospital.
For simplicity's sake, for the point of this discussion, let's say yes.
Okay.
There are some other minor options, but for the most part, we're talking about going to the state hospital. There's endless sort of options, but they're few and far between. So United Minds will go in and do that evaluation. They'll help kind of get a plan or what some of those options might be. And then if we have to go through the hearing, they provide in court and they provide that testimony. Before United Minds, we had a few different iterations, either through Western Montana Mental Health or through other private providers in the community. And some of them were great, but there was this constant turnover and churn. They weren't always as prepared as we currently have, and they weren't always as good in court. So we actually have this really well-functioning system right now through United Minds of doing those evals promptly every single day. You know exactly who to call, and when they show up in court, they're universally respected and appreciated by the courts, defense counsel, and obviously our office as well. So we've done a 3-year contract with United Minds. It's gone great. And you may recall a couple weeks ago, you actually did just sign another extension for 1 year. What United Minds is asking for is a $25,000 increase. They haven't had an increase since 21, I guess, when we first inked the contract, and they're asking for you to account for inflation, et cetera. This is a little bit weird because it's not necessarily like a priority for my office, okay? I just want to be really clear that they already did sign a 1-year contract, but they're doing a phenomenal service. And I just want to identify what the risk is if we don't maintain that relationship beyond this next year. If they like go away and say they don't want to do this work anymore, we are legally obligated to still do that. It means that every year we would basically go out in the community and find a private provider to do that eval and show up in court. And they get to charge us anything they feel like. We have to do it because it's required by law. And if they say, I won't do it for 500, but I'll do it for 5,000, we have to say, okay. So what we have right now with our contract with United Minds is an investment in a moderate, stable funding for the group to guarantee the services that are provided.
What's their total cost for the year?
So $130 a year currently, and they're asking for a $25,000 increase to account for inflation. So I'm just being blunt because that's what I am and that's what lawyers do. If you didn't give them $25,000, we do have this extension through next year, but I'm not sure what's that?
They would have an opt-out. They could elect to do that if they wish to.
And the irony is if they opted out, they still are pretty much the only providers in the county, and we would still probably call them and ask for them to do the work. And so I'm asking for you to just take that into consideration that we have this pretty well-functioning system right now, and they've been a really amazing partner, and I would be supportive of investing in that partnership with an increase of $25,000 a year. But my bigger ask is the next one. So these were not necessarily prioritized, but we're really struggling with emerging issues in what we call discovery. I know you're limited on time. Please shut me up if I start going on. But again, I just want to talk to you a little bit about a workflow of data that we use in our office. And I'm going to take like a complicated case. So a homicide. You might have a dozen officers and detectives involved. You've got an autopsy. You've got crime lab folks. And every single one of these people has either reports, video, audio, background data, cell phone downloads, Facebook subpoenas. We're getting a lot of car data now. That's really the emerging area in data sort of management for prosecutors. And if you went back 15 years, a homicide file might look like this, pretty much all paper, a handful of discs where people brought a camcorder out and videoed things, and that was it. It might be a few megabytes, I mean, a couple hundred megabytes of data. A homicide case now may be hundreds of gigabytes of data in one case alone. A cell phone download may be 128 gigabytes in one download. A drug dealer may have 5 cell phones on them. We're downloading every single one of those. I'm not really a data guy. I don't even know what all these mean, but just for reference, we are using currently in our system, we have 43 terabytes of data that we're actively using. We have 111 terabytes on external hard drives, and that's growing exponentially every year. This wouldn't surprise you, but as cell phones have become more prevalent, as your cars have more computer technology than we had going to the moon in the 60s, it grows every single year and the complexity of cases grows. So we call that data discovery, and criminal defendants have a constitutional right to get all of that. We must provide it to them, and we have to provide it to them promptly. If we don't, it impacts their rights. And from our perspective, it can also impact the case, including dismissal if we don't turn something over. So having discovery operate efficiently and completely is absolutely paramount to both defendants' rights and our ability to successfully prosecute. So that's kind of framing the issue. We, about 5 years ago, we had one discovery clerk, and she was really busy, but it was enough. When I started in this office, we basically had a bunch of shoe boxes with DVDs, and it contained all the data in our cases. And you'd just go and you'd find, if it's Abbott, you just look in A and you get your disc, and everything in that case is on there. We outgrew that, as you might be able to imagine. So we moved to external hard drives, and then we had this drawer of external hard drives, and every one of those was, a couple hundred gigabytes, and then we outgrew the drawers. And during COVID, as we were all home, we started looking for a new system as the data is growing and we couldn't physically be checking those out to different attorneys because of security risks. So IT was really helpful in getting what we're using as our J drive, and that's just a shared drive where the data is dumped. It's better than what we had, but when you start looking at the other options out there, it's starting to border on concepts of malpractice that we're using this rather than the options that exist. So to get the information in, say, our J drive, law enforcement would conduct their reports, they'd have all their body cam, all their car camera, and they're uploading it to their system. Then we have to make a request and we go download it from their system into our case management system for reports, and then all media in our J drive. Then to produce that to defense counsel, we burn that back onto an external hard drive, check it out to public defenders, they go to their office, they download it, inevitably have some issue with the video not playing, call our discovery clerks, say, I can't play it, and we turn into these like tech managers for OPD. So it's extremely inefficient, and as you have all these humans involved in it, you have an increased likelihood of error. If we miss something or don't turn it over, that can be absolutely destroy a case. So that's grown exponentially, like I said, about 43 terabytes currently. We're expecting that to go up to about 100 terabytes within a couple of years. We have 111 currently on hard drives for closed cases. That means when we end a case, we burn it onto an external hard drive. And then we have a warehouse with even older data, which probably has hundreds of more terabytes of data. It's my understanding, talking to Ken yesterday, that we are, aside from the Sheriff's Department, the biggest user of data and basically these sort of services in the county. So we had this catastrophic event last summer, and it exposed the risks of this system. Not only is it inefficient, but we had a data loss last summer that lost all the data in hundreds of cases. And we spent, I think, about $20,000 to try and recover it. It didn't recover it. Our paralegals went back and they went back through those cases. They started over. They re-downloaded everything, provided the defense counsel. It was very painful. It was very shocking to our office. It jeopardized a lot of cases, but we worked through it. But it exposed this weakness in our system. So we started looking for other options. And it's sort of like this idea of medical offices going from paper files to electronic records, or the modernization of any sort of business. And what you start finding is pretty much any larger jurisdiction is now using data management systems to control their discovery. And there's a whole bunch of vendors out there. And yes, fundamentally, it's a place for data to be. It's an alternative to the J drive, and it's on cloud services. So Amazon Web Services or Microsoft or whoever's providing it. They're CJIN compliant, so they deal with confidential records. It's like your medical records. Those are all saved out in the cloud somewhere as well. But to say it's data storage would be really diminishing some of the programs and what they are able to do. So if you go into our J drive currently, and actually Juanita was in my office a few weeks ago, and I was showing her how we use some of these things, including what's called a Faro scan, where there's a 3D image of a whole crime scene, like a murder scene, that tracks basically everything in a room, provides a complete 360 perspective, and you're able to kind of walk through a building almost like Google Earth would do, but inside the building. And it's amazing, but the data involved in that is huge, and it actually is really problematic to even open it on our systems, because to download it on our computers can sometimes take 20, 30 minutes. But if you want to download a cell phone, if I want to be able to view, say, text messages on a cell phone in like a rape case, I have to start that download at about noon one day, stop using my computer, and I hope sometime in the next 24 hours that it will complete the download to be able to use it. So we often end up actually bluffing a lot of the data that we have because we can't even access it under the system that we're using. So in these case management systems, what they will do is they will sync up with law enforcement, and they will, ideally, we would be choosing a similar vendor, or the vendor programs would at least talk to each other. When law enforcement is uploading something, it's immediately available on our system and associated with a case number. They're auto-converting all files into a manner that's viewable within their system. Every video or audio has an auto transcription feature. So we no longer have to watch, say, 55 minutes of a stop at the side of a road where we're looking for this one statement. They actually have auto transcription. So now you just do a control F and you find that exact spot. Every body camera is geolocated within these programs. And so you can actually pull up a map, which will show you exactly where every officer was at the time of responding to an incident and their movement through real time as they were responding. So if you're trying to show somebody, where were you standing when you observed this? We actually have a mapping system that can do that. And then you have editing functions within this system. So we can just be doing redactions immediately in the system where it never overrides the original copy of something, but you can immediately save new versions as you're editing. When I'm watching the availability of these programs, I start thinking of potentially hundreds of hours that I personally would save in my workflow and in each year. And then maybe hundreds for every attorney and our discovery paralegals. And we start seeing that what we're using is inadequate, has these high risks of failure, and isn't modern in a manner that's expected of criminal defendants in the system. So we need to move towards the system really soon. Starting in 2022, we were asking for new discovery paralegals. So we asked in 2022, because of budget reasons, that was denied. And we actually, because we still needed that, we took an existing admin position and we moved that person out of class to be functioning as a discovery paralegal, but they're not paid as a discovery paralegal. So they're doing that work for an admin salary. We requested another discovery paralegal last year. Again, I understand because of budget reasons, it wasn't approved. We moved another admin position to discovery paralegal because that's a priority. So we now are up to 4 discovery people managing this at all times. Because of the growth in data, you can basically assume we need to add 1 person a year under our current method. However, I do believe that investing in efficiency can change this to not need so much manpower because the system becomes automated and more efficient. So what I'm hoping is that actually spending money on discovery management software is going to eliminate our constant need for growth in discovery paralegals. So you will see that even though we requested a discovery paralegal the last 2 years, what we're trying to do now is increase efficiency to not just have this exponential growth forever in data management. So that really is a huge priority in our office. I know there's a budget issue, and I get that. And we're already, the new budget year already started. This isn't happening immediately. In the event that you were going to help us out on this, we would still be looking at a competitive process and looking to implement at some point in 2025. So this isn't like emergent. And I just want to note that even our monetary request here immediately don't need that much money for this fiscal year because it's just not going to happen tomorrow. There are some other options on pooling some of our resources with other law enforcement that we're happy to explore. We want to be as efficient as possible. And I know you have to balance a lot of stuff, but I am extremely worried that in the near future, without us having a better system, that we are going to be really bordering on that idea of malpractice.
Is this something that the sheriff's office could use as well, in tandem?
Yeah, so I do know that they're also looking for discovery management programs, and they've met with some of the same people that we have. I don't think they've chosen an option yet, but they're essentially in the same boat.
Okay.
And most of the vendors that we've looked at, I would hope that we could pick one system. But what's really amazing about some of these vendors is they basically write code to grab all data, even if it's another company.
Is there an economy of scale here?
A little bit because, I need to make it clear, most of the cost is actually the data retention. And that really is our biggest kind of financial issue. It is cheaper to save it on the J drive, sort of, until something bad happens. So if you look back at this last year, yes, it is cheaper to just keep buying more data for the J drive.
And the J drive is something that we built.
Yeah, it's a locally housed shared drive. I don't know where it exists.
But we're running out of memory on that as well.
Yes.
We are. So we've got 62 terabytes on the J drive. We're at 43 right now. And we'll probably fill that up at the end of this year. We'll have to go buy more data. That will be exponential until we'll probably cap out at about 200 terabytes of active data at some point in the future. That will cost tens of thousands of dollars in and of itself. And it's still housed locally, so you have those risks of failure. Something gets overheated and dies, you drop it, it dies, or there's a human error like last summer and we lose data. I'm not an expert in this, but these Amazon Web Services, they are contracting with medical providers, they're contracting with the government, they work with the military. They make sure that there is redundant systems for that data and constant backups, and it can be accessed anywhere. So that is the future regardless, and about 2/3 of the cost is just going to be data anyways. Then the cost on top of that is the programs with some of the features that I was talking about. So I hope that we could find a similar vendor and get some kind of discounts and say, oh, I don't necessarily have that info, or I can't make that promise right now.
How much are we talking about?
95 for the first year for the program that we really like, growing to low 100s a few years later. And again, that's mostly growth of data.
And and you've talked to the sheriff's department, justice, and like, that's something that they could.
Well, I don't want to make any
Somehow,
promises for them.
yeah.
They've met with the same vendors that we are, and they're looking for their future data management as well. So I don't know what they're going to choose. Happy to coordinate and work with them. There are sometimes slight differences of what they would need versus what we need. So while we want that to be the same, it could be a case where they're mostly focused only on cloud storage, but we need functionality.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a possibility there, but in the vendors we've talked to, they write code where it just grabs everything anyway. So it's not essential for the technological aspects, but it could be an issue for cost.
Where's
I'm
where's
me.
Ken?
I'm right here.
Ken's there,
Where's Ken?
okay, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I want to throw out there as well. I've had conversations with Matt. I've had conversations with Sheriff's Department, and I too am really looking for a scenario that gets us into a single converged platform for all law enforcement, because it's a big product, and it's really powerful, and I think it's going to be really cool ultimately for the county attorneys. I do also agree that their use looks a lot different than the sheriff's department, right? I think at the end of the day, we're sussing out some technical requirements around this platform, around all of these platforms, right? But I think ultimately that the conversation around this really looks more like, to me, it looks less like, or rather, it looks more like the long-term implications and the efficiency gains and the advanced, redaction and the video transcription and the conversion, and then of course the record keeping around sharing this data out. So I think there's a lot of really good stuff here. There are some technical, I think there are some technical barriers that I just spoke with Matt yesterday about, regarding making sure that our network is ready to handle this. My hope is that it is. So I'm working through that currently. And I have conversations starting today to try and evaluate that. But yeah, that's that's my statement on it for the moment anyway. Ken, don't you think that one system might be better than trying to maintain APIs or interfaces between various systems? Absolutely. I don't want to see two of these $100,000+ systems running in the county. And frankly, what it would look like if the sheriff's department and the county attorneys were to have separate systems is it would be that dueling data of each platform pulling data down into the network, pushing it back out into the cloud. And kind of, it's like two ships that pass each other in the night, right? It's just so inefficient. If you imagine that we're slinging data at each other through the internet, even though we're 20 feet apart physically, and that's just absurd when you're talking about hundreds of gigabytes, of course. So I really want that to be the case. Going through these hours and days of Teams meetings, selecting the ERP and implementing it. Yeah, but maintaining these APIs, even though these sales guys tell you they'll talk to each other. Yeah, they'll tell you anything. But, one system is always better.
Andrew, great point, and totally committed to doing our best to make that work. All that makes perfect sense to me. We're not trying to just go out on our own soloing this. Just need to have more conversations with the sheriff's department.
Yeah, maybe have
tech involved in it.
And we're already working our way down that path. So I feel confident that we'll get there. It's just it's relationship management really. So we just need to get to a common ground.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the info.
Thanks. And then we've been working with Chris and Erica on just some other competitiveness issues in our office. I think those are outside this discussion, so I'll just turnover wage.
Oh, I see.
Oh,
I was still competition. You meant wage competition.
Yeah, and I'll leave those out of this request. I just wanted to recognize Erica. It's been really helpful.
With the open market for attorneys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
those will be subject to other discussions in the future, but I appreciate that as well.
What are you going to do with all your free time after you get this discovery?
Not many things get me like super excited. I have a really small emotional bandwidth, and so I was like jumping up and down when we got the presentation on this because the death by 1,000 mosquito bites or paper cuts sort of issues that we have in our office. This like solves so many of them. It's just like the challenge that we've been facing that we felt powerless to change, and somebody walks in and is like, here's how you solve those. And we don't always get that. We actually have people constantly adding more complexity, more tasks, more paper cuts. And this is an example of, I mean, yes, we have a preferred vendor here, but there's several competing products out there, and we'll be competitive if approved. But the possibility of efficiency gains and making our lives easier and better service to the public, better services to defendants and protect their constitutional rights is really profound. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. You take this one off the door.
Oh, who's moving?
Here, Chantel.
Yeah,
That is
that's
fine.
Never mind. Well, hello, everybody. Today, Celadina is going to be talking about the Crime Victim Advocate Program Division and our budget request. This is her first time making a presentation, so be kind, be gentle. Start with easy questions.
John's gonna.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming.
this is ultimately for Dave, but
I have another one.
okay. And just real briefly setting the table. This is the our highest priority and the budget enhancement we have asked for over the years in different forms. And the one thing Celadina is not going to talk about per se is we have continued our grant writing. And just like every other year, we don't find out until mid-August, September-ish, because it's on the Fed schedule. And so we won't have information about whether or not we have a plan B or not until like probably August 20th at the earliest. And at one time they let us know October 5th. So
Stuff about what?
this is Office on Violence Against Women. The VAWA grant, which comes to the Montana Board of Crime Control, that one usually we have much better information sooner, but that only funds the coordinator position. So this is the advocates. All right, so Celadina, take it away.
Hi. Good morning, you guys. First off, I want to thank you for considering this proposal at all. And to start off, what I wanted to do is just read you, which is what I gave to you, some feedback that we recently received from two separate clients. So this first one is from a civil advocate, and our civil advocates help with TOPs and general process for orders of protection. So, dear Ms. Joni, I hope this email finds you well. I am writing to thank you very much for all the help provided during my case. Without you, it wouldn't be possible to get justice. Finally, we got an agreement, and although I would prefer to go to court to just demonstrate all of his bad actions, my attorney advised me to do better to finish through mediation. Jesus, I am nervous. I can't even read. Holy moly. Anyway, time to move on and continue with my new life. I will be thankful for you forever. The second one is from a criminal advocate. She's actually housed with the city, but I thought this one was really important to highlight. Hello, Ms. Gaynor and Ms. Koss. I want to add my appreciation to Doug Schaller's thank you note from Lisa Tips. I am the victim witness in the case and will spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair. The whole process of this trial got drawn out to a full year after the event, with sentencing and restitution now not until March. Actually, it just finished this month. I returned to Missoula after 4 months in the hospital in late May. When Lisa walked into my life, her kindness and help understanding the trial process made such a positive difference for my family and for me. She sat with me during pre-trial meetings and was invaluable in explaining what to expect and in supporting me. Anytime I had questions, and I had a lot of them, she either knew the answer or found it for me in a timely manner. Lisa introduced me to helpful resources in the community and even followed up with potential counselors or therapists. I didn't learn until the end of the trial Thursday that I didn't fully qualify for her services and that she had determined that sometime previously, but continued her warm support of me nonetheless. Lisa clearly has a strong work ethic as well as being compassionate and very competent at her job. I am so grateful for her help throughout this stressful trial. This is the kind of support would be great to everyone who has suffered trauma or injustice in our community. The more human connection during the trial process, the better it will go for everyone involved. Thanks for setting her up to succeed in her job. I read these to you not only to highlight the good job that our advocates do, my staff does, but to highlight the importance of their community, that we are in the community. And the reason that she said that she didn't fully qualify is most of our programs are grant funded, so we're restricted on who we can provide services to. And so we're providing services to victims of violence. And this was a motor vehicle hit and run. So generally speaking, we wouldn't be involved in that, but it was a victim of a crime and we're crime victim advocates. The city attorney asked, can you help out on this one? Lisa jumped to it. We helped out, proving that this was something that we really need to do. So I just wanted to kind of make point there. And then I have some numbers for you. So over the last fiscal year, this one that just ended, the crime victim advocates worked with a total of 1,709 people, providing 13,061 services to them. To put that into perspective, that's 229 more people than fit in the Wilma. So of those clients, 507 of them received help in getting orders of protection, and 1,438 received support around cases that had criminal charges. Nearly 15% of those clients received support both civilly and criminally, English, can't speak it. 43% of our clients experienced domestic violence, 12% reported sexual violence, and 9% reported stalking. We also have clients who are surviving family members of homicide, a non-offending parent of some child abuse cases, and then folks like the clients that wrote the letter above. So what I really want to highlight is often folk don't realize that they need an advocate until they need an advocate. And we're here along with the YWCA to help these people, and SARC and Safe First Step, not Safe Step. Safe Zone, Safe Step, First Step. They're all acronyms. And so it's important when someone comes to us that we realize that they've just survived one of the hardest things they may ever face in their life. They may be needing to relocate for safety. They may need housing. They may need help finding childcare because the person that they were relying on is now in jail. They may need clothing because their clothing is now actually evidence. And so in a sexual assault case or something to that effect. So things that I want to highlight is CVA spent 5,655 direct contact hours. So that's direct face-to-face hours. But that's not captivating all of the time that they spend watching court cases and informing the clients of what's going on with their court cases. That's not finding resources to help houseless populations or limited English proficiency clients or immigrant populations, or finding resources so that we can get someone on a bus to Butte. so that we can get them safely out of harm's way. Any other questions? Because I feel like I'm rambling
No,
and
it's great.
You're great.
not doing a great job.
Oh, you did great.
If it's helpful, I can do some breakdown of like how the whole of the division is funded and how this aspects within that.
Really try and make them advocates. I bet.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's 8 advocates and then myself.
And so Missoula's advocacy program does look different than across the state. But the thing about advocacy is it grew up organically everywhere. So there are various models. Ours is cross-jurisdictional. So we serve the city and the county, and advocates can follow cases throughout. So from the time of first call to law enforcement to sentencing. Not all advocacy programs do that. One of the things that is beneficial in that is not everybody knows. Law enforcement shows up and they're not tracking. Was that Missoula PD? Was that a sheriff?
Sure.
Who do I call? What do I do? And when you're in trauma, it can be even harder to track. So we are the first sort of like first call, and we'll get you wherever you need to go. Or sometimes we are calling you and saying, hey, we had a report that this happened, following up with you, checking on your safety.
How do you find out about, or like, who initiates the call? The police?
So in cases where law enforcement are called to the scene, particularly in domestic violence, there's a protocol that they can do, and they assess what's the dangerous level. This person in front of me, I just have this either score or gut feeling, they'll go either way, that you're at a high risk for either more serious assault later or homicide. At that time, they can put you on the phone with an advocate at the YWCA, their 24-hour crisis line. And then in the morning, we get a report from law enforcement and we follow up with a phone call. So one of the things around domestic violence homicide, at least in Montana, but specifically in Missoula, the homicide victims, by and large, have not had contact with advocacy. And folks who do have contact with advocacy have had better outcomes. So if you think about it, like who's at highest risk is people who don't have safe places to go, safe people to talk to, feel like they have alternatives, literally have alternatives. And so when you're involved with folks who can give you that support, it is a protective factor. It's not, a full shield, but it's a protective factor. But through that protocol, then when we're making that contact, even if that person does not want to talk to us in the moment, we've had a trust building moment. Mm-hmm. Like, you can always come back to us. You can drop in and out of the system several times. Close your ears, Matt. You can recant what you're saying and still come and talk to us. We are going to be there with the door open, no matter what, building trust, so that when you are ready, the rest of the system is here for you. So with that, with our advocates, we've got 5 who work in the justice system. 1 is assigned to Missoula PD, primarily focused on sexual violence cases. 1 is assigned to the sheriff's office. 1 is assigned to the county attorney's office, predominantly for felony cases. And then we have 1 or 2 who are assigned to the city attorney's office, and that's because their caseload is so high. Domestic violence misdemeanors make up the bulk of those cases, and most domestic violence cases are misdemeanors. So that's where
Those 2 each carry a caseload of about 300
Oh my.
each.
and then on the civil side, that is the people who are,
And these cases last
It can range. The shortest I've seen one last is simply because they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute evidence. So it was 2 weeks, and I've seen them go on 3 years now.
okay.
So there's 5, so there's 3 more.
and then 3 civils. And so those are the folks who are physically at the 317 Woody building, and they work in shifts. And that is answering phones and taking walk-ins. The bulk of the folks that they see don't want to be involved with the justice system. Low trust of law enforcement. Maybe they have their own history with law enforcement, but they still want safety. And so those folks are oftentimes looking for orders of protection or other sorts of resources. Maybe they need a referral to housing. Maybe they need help getting that bus to Butte, that sort of thing. And then because we have a philosophy of no wrong door, we are also a place where folks might just show up and they don't know what they need or who they need to talk to. And those advocates will do some assessment and figure that out and help get them where they need to go to the best that they can. And then we are also the only spot physically where you can pick up the paperwork to fill out for order of protection. Now you can do it online, but not everybody has access to, internet. And so to physically get that paper, they'll come. And even if we're not helping them, they still have questions. And so we will just be there to give them the customer service to get them what they need in that moment. And then ultimately judges are going to make decisions on whether or not the order of protection is upheld or not upheld or granted or not granted. And so with those advocates, as you might imagine, somebody wants to go on vacation, somebody is out for maternity leave, somebody
It's stolen from me.
Yeah, and so those advocates,
Judge Beal stole one of my advocates for the debate.
Oh,
but those 8 also cover each other when somebody's out. And then Celadina holds
I hold an LCSW, so a lot of our staff have MSWs and they need clinical supervision so that they can get that higher licensure. And so it's a support and it's a track for improvement in higher licensure. Moving on if they.
is it a requirement to be an MSW to?
No, it is not a requirement.
no, but
Advocacy is one of those jobs where lived experience really pays off. And so there's a requirement for a bachelor's or similar experience. But when I'm looking at somebody that I'm hiring, I want somebody who knows what it's like to have gone through this process.
But some of this, on that licensure side, the Board of Behavioral Health made some changes a couple of years ago where, it came through the legislature, but is home with the Board of Behavioral Health, which is in order to say you are a social worker, you have to be licensed. And that's at the bachelor level or master's or clinical. And so for people who hold a social work degree, you can't say that you're a social worker unless you're licensed. And that is a change. And so being able to support folks in their career path helps keep us
Sure.
competitive and provides them the support they need. And then the other side of that is advocacy, just like all of our other responders, they do have a high rate of secondary trauma and potential for burnout. And so high quality supervision is one of the protective factors there as well. Being able to have time off, being able to have job security, being able to grow in your career, all of those things help make for a healthy work environment where people are coming to work because they're excited to.
And how much does the whole program cost then? Or like what's,
The whole program or this ask?
actually both?
This ask is
$230,000.
Okay.
and that's for 3 FTE.
Did you get that to us?
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you.
And so that's 3 FTE and a small amount of operations to support. And then the full program is, I should have looked that up. I think it's just under 900,000 for all.
And that's all.
Imagine the city's involved in some way.
Yep. So they support 2 FTE through a contract. And historically, the county has supported the manager position and 1 advocate FTE. And then we've been using grant funds to piece it together. Now, the last several years, ARPA has been part of that mix.
And the big grant that is MacArthur or no, what's the grant that we get this from?
We have had several. So there's one grant through the Board of Crime Control called VOCA
Yeah, thank you.
that is capped at $125,000 a year. And it lasts for 2 years. So that one we can write over and over again, but that basically funds 2 FTE. And then we have had Office on Violence Against Women grants, both the rural grant as well as it's called Improving the Criminal Justice System grant. And those are almost always multi-agency grants that it includes some with YWCA, and we've done outreach and education programs up in Sealy, and the,
I'm sorry to interject. I think we might need to continue this discussion at another admin because we have another item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
to Get to.
Thank you.
I'm really, really sorry to
That's
that.
okay.
You guys. I want to make sure that you say all the things you need to say, but we're really bumping up against a time constraint here.
Sorry.
Got
Thank
it.
you.
I'm sorry.
that's
Thanks for
okay.
keeping track of us.
Well, not so great at it today.
If I could
but-
just say one last thing, if
Of
you have
course.
questions that you want us to respond to by email, we're happy to.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for all the great work that you all do.
Thank you.
Brian.
Sorry, Brian. Yes.
Actually, Erica's got the agenda items.
Oh, yeah, is this your water bottle?
Yes.
Yeah. I think this is Matt's pen. This is your pen.
County pen. All right, so this is the second discussion item. And the request that you'll see on the agenda is authorization to use risk funds to support litigation involving the DNA climbing structure located at the Missoula Public Library. And the litigation would potentially involve the contractor who both designed and installed that structure. So just to set the stage for, the background on the climbing structure, how we got here. The city of Missoula worked with, applied for a grant with the National Institute of Health to fund the construction of that DNA climber. Slavin can definitely add to this because I'm sure I won't say all the things I need to. But that grant is essentially to support some research that would be active research. So children would use that structure, but there would also be components of observing and all of those things that would then, basically provide the end product that is responsible or is required in order for this grant to be fulfilled. So
You want me to say that co-creation was a big part of it?
yeah.
So co-creation with the community, particularly tribal representation from CSKT to develop a playground related to the DNA structure. So that was part of what the grant funds were paid for were used for as well.
So the city contracted with Process Curiosity, which is a Salt Lake City-based designer and also fabricator installer for this structure. In 2022, the city transferred ownership of that structure to Missoula County. This arises out of the interlocal for the library, and just basically it made a lot of sense for the county to take ownership of this since the county is responsible for the building. It seemed bizarre to have a structure within the building, but the county is responsible for ensuring, maintaining all of those things. So that occurred at the time that the structure was transferred. Prior to opening, the county engaged a safety inspector to evaluate the structure to ensure safety before we opened it for children to play on. And it has not passed safety inspections to date. We've actually gone through 2 inspections to date. And so we have, the county is the we, along with library, have engaged with Process Curiosity to try to get the structure retrofitted, and yet it still remains not compliant with those safety inspections. And so while we'll continue to engage with Process Curiosity in hopes that we don't have to reach full-blown litigation, we've truly are reaching sort of this nexus of needing to talk to you all about next steps and whether litigation is where we need to go.
Next portion of the discussion would tread on litigation strategy, and having public discussion would be detrimental to our positions. So at this point, I'd encourage the board to close the meeting.
Move to close the meeting.
Second, any further discussion? Okay, close the meeting. Thanks, everyone.